What was even crazier is Jon Jones came out and was like, I'm in negotiations right now for the White House fight.
I'm in negotiations with the UFC about this White House thing as well.
After I had already sent a text to his lawyer saying, never gonna happen ever.
All right, Sunday morning, leaving Las Vegas. Freedom 250 was announced last night at the White House, going down in June. So we're going to talk about this. I honestly thought we were going to see Jon Jones versus Alex Pereira, more than likely in the main event. Of course, that's not the main event. That is Justin Gaethje taking on Ilia Topuria for the undisputed lightweight championship of the world, which is a great fight, which is the fight that should happen because obviously meritocracy and they've got an interim champion. There was people saying that maybe Charles Oliveira or Max Holloway could have gazumped Justin. Maybe if they had an insane performance. I'll say this, Charles Oliveira had an insane performance.
In the high-stakes theater of mixed martial arts, the biggest statements are often made by the names omitted from the marquee. When the UFC announced Freedom 250, a monumental, politically charged event slated for the lawn of the White House, the combat sports world collectively held its breath, expecting the consensus greatest of all time, Jon Jones, to headline the spectacle. Jones himself fueled the fire, publicly claiming he was deep in negotiations for the historic card. But behind closed doors, a much colder reality was unfolding. Texts were sent to legal representatives stating unequivocally that a Jones appearance was never going to happen. Instead of the reigning heavyweight kingpin, the UFC pivoted, placing Justin Gaethje and Ilia Topuria at the top of the bill. The sheer absence of Jon Jones from such a prestigious, culturally significant card under Dana White's watchful eye speaks volumes. It isn't just a missed booking, it is a calculated, quiet attack on the perception of Jones's current draw, his reliability, and his standing within the promotion's future.
Stopped Max Holloway, didn't put him to sleep per se, but certainly a TKO, so that wouldn't have made sense anyway. Now, I did think Jon Jones, the greatest of all time according to a lot of people, and yeah, probably is, obviously many asterisks to his name. I thought he'd be fighting Alex Pereira because Alex Pereira vacated the belt. Yuri versus Carlos Ulberg is going down in Miami. That's a great fight. I'm very happy for Yuri Prochazka and for Carlos Ulberg. He's a class act.
Ultimately, the story of Freedom 250 is the story of the UFC's cold, unyielding corporate reality. If Jon Jones's legendary career has truly come to a close due to decaying hips and broken negotiations, it concludes an era defined as much by brilliance as by turmoil. He has made an unfathomable amount of money and cemented a legacy that will be debated forever. But the promotion has made its stance violently clear. No single fighter, regardless of their resume, is larger than the brand. As the UFC prepares to host a historic spectacle of violence on the lawn of the White House featuring new kings and fresh narratives, the ghost of Jon Jones serves as a cautionary tale. In the ruthless business of cage fighting, you are either the main event or you are a memory.
Now, there's an interim title going down in the heavyweight division. Tom Aspinall, obviously. He's been on the sidelines for quite some time now because of Cyril Gane, because of the double eye poke that he enjoyed and suffered at in UFC 321 in Abu Dhabi, right? He's on the sidelines. He's coming back. He just signed with Eddie Hearn. I gave my thoughts on that the other day. Wasn't being critical of Tom in any way. I wish him nothing but the best, and I want to see Tom Aspinall back in the cage doing what he does best. But I can't help but think that Eddie Hearn's kind of playing games here, but we'll see. I talked about that before. The reality of the situation is, though, he's not ready to come back just yet, so they've done an interim title with Alex Pereira versus Cyril Gane.
To understand the gravity of the UFC's decision, one must look at the fights they chose to showcase instead. By elevating Gaethje and Topuria for the undisputed lightweight championship, the promotion sent a clear message. The White House card is built on absolute meritocracy. These are active, thrilling fighters who step into the fire without hesitation. Contrast this with the looming shadow of Jon Jones. While many consider him the undeniable GOAT, his legacy is heavily weighed down by asterisks, periods of extreme inactivity, out-of-the-cage controversies, and protracted contractual standoffs. For Dana White and the UFC brass, putting together an event with international political optics means reliability is paramount. Jones's history of unpredictability simply represented too massive a risk for a stage intended to project strength and stability. The machine has decided to move forward, effectively signaling that it will no longer wait for its most elusive monarch.
Some people might think, well, that's weird. I've gone the wrong way. That's weird. He pokes Tom Aspinall and then gets rewarded with an interim title shot. Well, first of all, accidents do happen. It wasn't intentional. I'll give Cyril the benefit of the doubt on that. People get poked in the eye all the time. I don't think they're intentional. But regardless, he is fighting for the interim strap against Alex Pereira, which is very impressive because Alex Pereira will be the first person to ever compete for 3 different titles, 3 different weight classes, which is just, it is insane. I mean, the success that this guy's had is phenomenal.
As the White House card takes shape without him, a heavy, somber question hangs over the MMA community. Is Jon Jones quietly retired? If this is indeed the end of the line, it is a remarkably unceremonious way for the greatest martial artist of a generation to exit the stage. Veterans of the sport often speak of the romanticized ideal of the final fight, the desire to leave the gloves in the center of the octagon, absorb the roar of the crowd, and walk away on one's own terms. But the fight business is devoid of romance. The UFC cannot afford to stall its massive operations to accommodate a fighter's dream of a perfect sunset. If Jones's absence from this monumental card marks his quiet fade into the shadows, it is a stark reminder that the sport will simply march forward, leaving even its gods behind without a second thought.
That's Jon Jones would have just taken down Alex Pereira. Pardon me, it's early. I've only had a few hours sleep. But yeah, Jones would have probably taken down Pereira. Wouldn't have been easy, right? Magomed Ankalaev has tried to do that. Other people have tried to do that. Jan Blachowicz tried to do that. But this is Jon Jones we're talking about. Look at what he did to Cyril Gane. And remember, in the first round, even Tom Aspinall couldn't take down Cyril Gane. But Jon could, right? So that's just something to think about. Jon would have probably taken Pereira down and finished him by a ground and pound, you know, just choked him out, whatever. And it could have been a quick performance.
In a move that stunned MMA purists, the UFC elected to book an interim heavyweight title clash between Cyril Gane and Alex Pereira for the White House card. For Gane, it is an incredibly fortunate turn of events, rewarded with a title shot shortly after accidentally poking Aspinall in the eye and halting their fight. But the true genius of the booking lies in Alex Pereira. By placing Poatan in this spot, the UFC is chasing history, offering the Brazilian phenom the unprecedented opportunity to capture a world title in a 3rd distinct weight class. This decision underlines the promotion's ultimate priority, compelling historic storylines trump waiting indefinitely for an undisputed champion. For Jon Jones, watching the division move on with a record-breaking narrative on a presidential stage must serve as a stark, bitter reminder that his grip on the sport's imagination is actively slipping away.
Either man is going to shoot a double leg takedown. It's going to be a kickboxing match in 4-ounce gloves. And then when you look at the matchup, on one side you've got Pereira, who's got insane power, who was the middleweight champion, the light heavyweight champion, and now potentially heavyweight champion. Again, legendary stuff. The power will travel. He had knockout power at 185, 205 he will. And at heavyweight, he's still going to pack the same amount of punch. Granted, you're fighting bigger people, you're striking bigger people with bigger necks and bigger jaws and just generally heavy, so they'll be able to absorb the blows better. But he's still going to crack a punch, man. Simple as that.
The ripple effects of Jones's absence are most deeply felt in the heavyweight division, a weight class currently engulfed in a chaotic whirlwind. The natural successor to the hype, interim champion Tom Aspinall, has found himself sidelined on multiple fronts. Recovering from a devastating eye poke suffered in Abu Dhabi, Aspinall's return has been further complicated by his new alliance with boxing promoter Eddie Hearn. As Hearn publicly critiques Aspinall's UFC contracts, a familiar stalling pattern has emerged. This gridlock at the top of the division created a vacuum, one that the UFC chose to fill not by waiting for Jones or Aspinall, but by engineering an entirely new spectacle. The chaos allowed fresh narratives to step into the spotlight, proving that the promotion's momentum cannot be halted by the absence of its reigning champions.
But he's got the punching power. He's not quite as smooth or quite as slick as Cyril Gane, although I'm not saying he's not slick, I'm not saying he's not smooth, I'm not saying he hasn't got great combinations, because he does. He's a brilliant world-class kickboxer. But on the other side, you've got Cyril Gane, who's very, very light on the feet, very bouncy, very floaty. He kind of glides around the octagon and extremely fast for the heavyweight division. I don't think either guy is going to go for a takedown. If it does go down to the ground, it'll be after one of them gets knocked down. Shut up with the announcements, please. I'm trying to do a YouTube video like an absolute bellend walking through an airport and everyone's looking. It's full of UFC fans.
Compare that clinical grappling scenario to the absolute violence promised by Cyril Gane versus Alex Pereira. This matchup is a guaranteed 4-ounce glove kickboxing war perfectly tailored for a high-profile audience. On one side, you have Pereira, a man carrying terrifying, generation-defining power that has seamlessly translated from middleweight all the way up to the heavyweight limit. On the other, you have Gane, a heavyweight who moves with the bouncy, floaty grace of a middleweight, utilizing slick combinations and elite footwork. Neither man is expected to shoot for a takedown unless they are badly hurt. It is a stylistic masterpiece designed to ensure fireworks. By explicitly choosing this striker versus striker dynamic over the grappling heavy threat of Jon Jones, Dana White executed a masterstroke of matchmaking, proving the UFC prioritizes maximum entertainment over the presence of an inactive king.
I don't think either guy is going to go for a takedown. If it does go down to the ground, it'll be after one of them gets knocked down. Shut up with the announcements, please. I'm trying to do a YouTube video like an absolute bellend walking through an airport and everyone's looking. It's full of UFC fans because UFC 326 was last night. Anyway, yeah, if it goes to the ground, it's because one of them knocks each other down and then they go to finish it. So this is going to be a fantastic striking affair in the co-main event at the White House of Freedom.
To further insulate the event from the fallout of missing its biggest historical star, the UFC stacked the Freedom 250 card with a violently entertaining undercard. Matchups featuring rising fan-favorite finishers like Diego Lopes taking on the brutally heavy-handed Steve Garcia, alongside the all-American wrestling pedigree of Bo Nickel against Kyle Dacus, ensure that the event is must-see television from the very first bell. These aren't just needing to rely on the fading ghosts of their past champions.
The script has been flipped completely on its head. Remember, he was the interim champion and couldn't get a shot at the undisputed. Hello, she's looking at me with a smirk. Couldn't get a shot at the undisputed with Jon Jones because he wasn't playing games. He had a fight booked against Stipe Miocic, but then Jones certainly was playing games. You know, after the Curtis Blades matchup, we didn't know what he was doing. Now, we don't know what's happening with Tom, right? I assume their eyes are going to be good to go very, very soon, right? Otherwise, Eddie Hearn isn't going to sign a fighter that can't fight, right? So
if Jon Jones was available, why wasn't he booked to defend his throne against the rising tide of Alex Pereira? The answer lies in a subtle but devastating critique of Jones's current fighting style from within the MMA ecosystem. Analysts suggest that a Jones versus Pereira matchup wouldn't deliver the necessary theatrics. The overwhelming consensus is that Jones would simply shoot a double leg takedown, drag the kick. The UFC justifies his exclusion without ever having to attack his character directly. It is a...
This time it'll be for an interim belt versus an undisputed belt, which makes the fight even bigger. As I said on another video the other day, it all depends on these contractual negotiations. Eddie Hearn came out and was kind of shitting on Tom's contract and saying that he doesn't get paid what he should get paid if Eddie's going to try and change that contract. And you know, that is what a good manager does, to be fair, and you want the best management team on your side. You certainly don't want an amateur, you don't want a chump, you don't want someone that doesn't know what they're doing. But if he tries to push the goalposts far too far, UFC aren't going to agree to that, and there might be some kind of stalling, and we might have Tom
The absence of Jon Jones is thrown into even sharper relief when compared to the other massive star missing from the White House. Himself pointed out, his name alone is a guaranteed blockbuster sellout, whether he fights at the White House or in a standard arena for UFC 300 or 301. McGregor is the event. Jones, while a legend, does not command that same standalone, undeniable paid his own terms elsewhere, while quietly leaving the unreliable champion off the marquee.
Knocked out Jean Silva, and what else did he do? Oh, I mean, listen, he's just must-see TV. And then on the other side, Steve Garcia hasn't got the same kind of brand value as Diego Lopez, but holy shit, man, he's on, I think, an 8-fight win streak, and they're all stoppages, most of them in the first round. I think one of them got to the second round. And you gotta love Steve Garcia. He's a nasty, nasty guy. So that'll be the first fight on the card. I didn't see this one coming. Bo Nickel versus Kyle Dorcas. I didn't expect that one, but it'll be a good fight. Dorcas, he's on a 2-fight win streak. Bo Nickel, of course, represents America to the fullest.
The irony of the current heavyweight landscape is impossible to ignore. There was a time when Jon Jones was the one playing games, utilizing his leverage to stall divisions and orchestrate his ideal matchups, leaving contenders like Curtis Blaydes and Stipe Miocic in a state of perpetual limbo. Now, the script has been violently flipped on its head. It is the UFC that is playing games with Jones's legacy, actively promoting interim titles and moving the spotlight away from his undisputed reign. The promotion is demonstrating that no fighter is bigger than the brand. By highlighting Jones's past stalling tactics, the narrative seamlessly justifies his current exile, presenting his absence from the White House card not as an arbitrary snub, but as the direct, inescapable consequence of his own contractual chess matches.
Fair play, right? Obviously, there was talk of Conor McGregor and Michael Chandler competing on that card. Dana said, nah, we ain't interested in that anymore. But it turns out it was the Conor McGregor side. Now, Conor came out and he was doing an interview with Chael Sonnen, and he brought up some good points. He said, listen, it's going to be a sellout with my name involved. Regardless, it's going to do blockbuster numbers.
You know, like a double sale thing. That's the White House is going to hit no matter what.
And he's absolutely right. When Conor comes back, it's going to be insane, right? And that's just the facts of the matter. So they don't need to put him on the White House card. And he said, they don't put me on 300. They'll put me on 301 or 200. They'll put me on 201.
The ongoing negotiations surrounding Tom Aspinall and Eddie Hearn serve as a perfect indirect mirror to the Jon Jones saga. When management teams attempt to aggressively move the financial goalposts, pushing the UFC for larger pieces of the pie, the promotion's response is historically ruthless. They simply pivot. If Hearn pushes too far, Aspinall sits on the sidelines. This identical dynamic has defined Jon Jones's later career. Dana White's operational reality is absolute. If a fighter's terms do not align with the promotion's budget and schedule, the machine will build a new main event. This underlying business tension paints the true picture of the White House card. Jones wasn't irreplaceable. His price tag and terms simply failed to align with a promotion that has endless avenues to generate pay-per-view buys.
Do we think Jon Jones actually is retired? That'll be it. We'll never see him again. If it is, it's kind of an unceremonious way to go out. I remember when I retired, I wasn't happy with the way that it ended because I wanted to retire in the octagon after a fight, win or lose. I wanted to thank the crowd. That's why I was going to take one more fight. I was actually in negotiations to fight Rashad Evans at the O2 Arena in London because I romanticized this idea of thanking the crowd and all this type of stuff and putting the gloves down and going through that whole thing. And my manager, Audiatara, was like, Mike, you're romanticizing this in your mind for this big moment, but what you're doing is you're putting your vision. Also ashamed that apparently he needs hip surgery. He was talking about, being riddled with arthritis, got caught on camera. Dana mentioned that again at the press conference.
Is it fair to say then Jon Jones is retired and this is the end of his time?
Yes.
Said he might need a hip replacement. So I hope that all works out for him. And if it is the end of a legendary career, fair play, man. Talk about knocking it out of the park, making an insane amount of money and building a life for yourself, because that's really what you can do. A lot of people talk shit about the UFC and they say me being a company man. Look at me, for crying out loud. One day you could be me, wandering around an airport with a camera in your hand, looking like an absolute dildo.
Adding a final lethal layer to the narrative of Jones's decline, Dana White made a highly strategic move during a recent press conference by publicly discussing the champion's severe physical ailments. By openly detailing Jones's struggles with arthritis and the impending need for a major hip replacement surgery, the UFC president completely undermined Jones's immediate future as a viable competitor. This wasn't framed as an attack, but as concern. Yet the tactical result was devastating. It painted a picture of a physically broken, unreliable asset. This public medical disclosure effectively sabotaged any lingering fan outrage over Jones's absence from the White House event. It allowed the UFC to legitimize moving on, subtly suggesting that the greatest of all time is no longer physically capable of holding the throne.